Hey there, super sober heroes. It's your host, Sober Steve, the podcast guy, here with my friend Dillon in real life for another brand new episode of Gay A, the Queer Sober Hero Show. And I am having so much fun getting to do in person recordings. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you being here, so thank you. Yes, and I am also 1,367 days sober as of today's recording. And I am also grateful for discovering that in addition to my main 12-step program being AA, that I also am belonging pretty well in ACA meetings. We had a guest on a while back, Melinda, talking about ACA, and at the time I wasn't ready to hear everything she had to say, but I'm ready now, and I heard it, and I'm going, and I'm enjoying that part of the journey. What have you been grateful for recently? What's going on in your life?
Been grateful for, I've recently got a new dog, so that's been bringing a lot of happiness and gratitude into my life, and just really good where life is at right now. Got a beautiful home, beautiful job, beautiful relationship, beautiful dog now. So just grateful for just life in general.
Yeah, excellent. Speaking of gratitude and things that we love, what makes you happy to be sober today?
I have my wits about me. And sober now is 17 months since I made that decision. And I couldn't imagine myself with alcohol at this point in my life. It makes me happy that I can wake up in the morning and feel productive and know that I don't have to rely on a substance to really alter my life or whatnot. But I'm grateful that where it has me being able to be the best version of myself.
I love that. I love the best version of you because you came into my life in your recovery. I am very glad that it led to our paths crossing as well. And speaking of, we met in the local queer Sarasota community. What makes you grateful for happy to be part of the queer community today?
Oh, that sense of community has always been a huge aspiration. Something I always like, because I've been gypsy my whole life. So having that sense of community, no matter where I go, I always try to establish roots, no matter how involved I am with or without the community. The fact that it's there and being able to be part of that, especially in Sarasota, where the queer community, even though it's large, it's not as large as, say, like Tampa or Orlando or Miami. Just being part of that small niche of community is just enough to feel grateful.
Yeah, I'm finding that, especially with Sarasota being a smaller community, that it makes it almost like more important to be out at everything because you're seen. And when you're not there, you're also not seen. And so with all of that, and especially since I've gotten to know you more in recovery, I'm excited to hear a little bit about how you found yourself here. So why don't we jump in and tell us what your road to recovery was like?
Alcohol was 14 was when I had my first drink, and friends were doing it. That's all we pretty much did. And I remember being 16 years old, downtown Omaha, Nebraska, where I was in the back of a car with a handle of vodka and thing of OJ, and we just sit there and just take pulls, and that just progressed over the years to where I never really identified as having an issue with it, but I absolutely recognized when I had tendencies to absolutely abuse it. But then it got to the point where I was like, I couldn't just go out and have a drink or go to dinner and have a glass of wine. It was either drunk or not. I think up until my late 20s, into my just in probably the first couple of months of my 30s, is when it kind of a light bulb went off. It was my 30th birthday party. It's where I knew something had to change. I had also dabbled into substances as well, and I just remember being at my own birthday party, having to rush to the bathroom to do a key bump and do a little shooter in the bathroom, and I don't even remember the rest of the remaining of the evening. And that was where my tipping point was like, what am I doing? My friends were all like, they didn't say anything at the night, but I have now come to realize we're starting to worry about me, and the conversations between them were starting to be, does Dylan have a problem? Do we need to get interventions? And thankfully, though, I had enough self-realization in that moment to realize, okay, I need to change something because I don't like this version of what's happening. And it was from there on that I started the relationship with alcohol. We had an on and off again relationship for probably a few years, up until 17 months ago, to where to do a few sober stints, try to go 3 months or 6 months. And each time it always ended up either a situation, an external situation or internal struggle to where I'd always resort to going to buy a bottle of wine on my way home. But it was 17 months ago where I remember my last drink was a glass of red wine, and I woke up the next day and I only had one glass, and I had the worst headache I think I've ever had, the worst hangover I've ever had. And I just woke up and I was like, this is dumb, and haven't touched it since. And it's been the most empowering situation I think I've ever had for myself. Just being able to have that enough I don't know the word I'm looking for, but self-awareness. There we go. And just the drive just to be able to say, you know what, this isn't serving me anymore.
Yeah, especially with, at that point, I can imagine for many of us, it's become like a habit where it's not only just a physical, but it's mental, emotional. How did you, after having that aha moment, stick with it? Because I'm sure it wasn't just that one choice, but you had to choose that every single day and multiple times throughout the day.
I did. I had still a lovely therapist to this day that I worked very well with. And we were working on reframing things. Because there was personal life situations going on where reframing was like my 2022 to 23. That was like my mantra, reframe. And I had to almost continuously reframe my outlook on it. Reassure myself that you made this decision, you need to stick with it, but also reframing it in the sense that this is actually good. And even when I would put myself in social situations where I would be more prone to drink, then the reframing process came into feeling empowered. Okay, I don't need to drink to have fun. I can be the sober one. And I also found little pockets of empowerment, like, oh, I can be the sober one for my friends. I can be the designated driver. We can take away the anxiety. And it was just reframing it to be a supportive thing, not just only for myself, but for everybody else. Because that's also the other thing is when you are out in public, people don't ask you your story right away. They immediately think that you're going to be doing exactly what they're doing. So when I can be that person saying, I'm not drinking a real DD tonight, it's just that sense, it gives you a sense of power. It's just that moment where you get to reclaim that power, and it feels everything that all this is you made up to this for the better has been forgiven. And it's a great feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And making that shift, you talked about like the friends who were concerned about your drinking, but you've also made new relationships in recovery that help keep you sober. How did you connect with those people? Because I hear a lot of times people say, oh, if you don't go to this 12-step meetings or if you don't belong to this specific fellowship or this fellowship, it's hard to find sober people. How do you connect with sober people?
Honestly, for me, it was circumstance. I think my higher power or, grace of God is something people in my life who went to Dillon that were sober. I didn't seek them out. My first real true friend after I made that decision, who's still my friend today, Chris, I think you have to know him, just became really good friends. And then all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I'm sober. And I'm like, oh, I'm sober too. And then from there, it just became, he introduced me to other sober people. And then also circumstantially, when my partner and I got together, I quit drinking a year ago as well. I was like, it was this almost like the universe was saying this was the right path. Here are people to support you on me.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. And then of course meeting you guys and then finding your podcast. Because that's what I think when you and I first met, we started talking was like this podcast. I was like, this is such an amazing thing because I was new to being sober and having this, even though I identified as an alcoholic, like having this, being able to talk about it out loud and getting goosebumps. It's like the universe was saying, you are doing the right thing.
You are. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Yes, Chris is responsible for my giant monster bag of candy obsession, blending them all together. Thanks for that cross addiction. But I'm now like 2 weeks clean of my giant monster bag of every sour candy mixed together. Yes, I am. And with what kind of quotes or mantras do you hold on to that help you stay sober? It gets better?
Resilience has been something I have very strongly to my heart. I've had to be resilient my entire life. And I feel like that's helped shape my outlook on things in life because life will shit on you at every possible moment it can. But it's if you let it continuously do that or if you reframe. And every situation you are dealt with is meant to be a learning lesson. And that's how I have been able to reinforce that on a daily basis. But resilience has been something that I've had to lean on in those times. But knowing that even though this could be the darkest of dark, there's always going to be light at the end of the tunnel. My favorite quote ever that I live by is by Albus Dumbledore from Harry Potter. Happiness can be found in the darkest of places, if only one remembers to turn on the light.
Yeah.
The third Harry Potter book, like 200 pages in, Albus Dumbledore, that quote has been I already have words all over get it tattooed on me, but it's been something that it's been like my push and its mantra.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely know that having those things to say that you can say like over and over again help because, yeah, life doesn't get any easier in recovery. In the past 17 months of recovery, what would you say has been one of the more difficult things you've had to overcome, and how did you do staying sober?
The most difficult thing of overcoming is on an ongoing grief journey that I'm going to. Late in 22, I lost my sister. And that's something I'm going to deal with the rest of my life. After she had passed, I remember telling my mother, I said, I don't want and that was 3 months stint where I stayed drink 3 months after she had passed. And going to that, I realized that I didn't want to fall to alcohol to numb my pain or to distract my brain from doing what it needed to do, which was to grieve.
Yeah.
So I jumped into the grieving journey after that situation had happened and did the worked with my therapist, and abstained from drinking as much as possible. In those times, though, again, when you can get through it, and I know it's easier said than done, when you can get through it, it's just such a sense of empowerment, being able to realize that you handle the situation without needing to use that crutch or to use that substance. And I guess getting through those without the need of alcohol, it's not easy, because when you are drinking, there's always an excuse to drink. Oh, I stubbed my toe. I need a drink tonight. Or, oh, I had a bad conversation with my boss. I need a drink tonight. Falling back onto your support system and having that was a huge help during that transition from going through that traumatic experience to then coming back into and getting back into work and living the real life. It's leaning on your support and then trusting yourself to keep going and stay sure.
That definitely takes a lot, and that is definitely something I'm sure will be advice that our listeners really appreciate. Now, knowing that you've made so many great changes in your life over the past 17 months, if you could tell your sister something today, what would you tell her about you or your recovery or your life?
Thank you. I think from her situation, and I use it to compare it to a lot, because people, for instance, will say, aren't you falling in love? When my partner and I got together, we had a history where this is our third attempt at love. And so this is for the example, is that when we got back together, people are like, aren't you afraid of getting hurt? Or I just don't want him to break your heart again, or this or that. And my answer has never wavered. And it's been, I've seen the darkest of darks. I've been in the darkest place of my life. And yet I am here today. I'm happy. And so I think that going through that situation showed me, even though things it could be like the world is ending tomorrow, but I still made it through.
Yeah.
And again, a light at the end of the tunnel. And I wouldn't have been able to really understand the light without going through the darkest of dark. And for that, I do think, of course, I'd rather not have gone through that situation, had my sister here today. But that situation has taught me and reinforced that resilience that I just hold so near and dear. And I'm not afraid to go through tougher situations, because I already know that I've gone through something that is no one, at least in our younger ages, should we experience. However, like I said earlier, life will throw you shit, and it's just how you approach it. But it's knowing it will get better. And so that's what I would thank you to her, is that she strengthened me. And it was unfortunate that the situation happened to get to that point, but it's because of her that I'm a stronger person today.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
And when we are in crisis or when we're stressed or overwhelmed, a lot of the mindset tricks can be very helpful, but they're also very difficult when we're like in the middle of it. So what's something physical that you do to give yourself like a hard reset, whether it's, sometimes people say it's like meditating, praying, going for a run or a walk. What do you do if you need to like physically change your situation before you can change your mindset?
Going for walks, being in nature. I've always, even as a kid, that nature and outside is my God. That's my higher power. That's where I connect with earth, because that's where life started, with nature. And that's where anytime I feel overwhelmed or upset, taking a nice long walk with my headphones, playing either some music or listening to an audiobook, that shifts my brain and kind of resets. A form of meditation for me, but being able to just be outside is really, and then writing. I've been a huge writer my whole life as well. And like probably 6 or 7 journals. They're all started at random different times, but if I see one, I'll just start writing.
Yeah. Awesome. Excellent. Any last words, bits of advice, anything for our listeners generally on your story?
Oh, I bet if there's anything I can leave with is, as cliche as it is, how people always say, and it's easier said than done, but life does better. You could be at your lowest point if you have the strength to realize that this is just the stepping stone to your next greatness. There is always a brighter side. There is always light over the rainbow. And just always keep on pushing forward, because at the end of the day, you matter and you matter to others. And so for that, just know that life does get better.
Excellent. Yes, life does get better. Mm-hmm. I have multiple horrible moments throughout each day, and then it's always better 5 minutes later. I just need to breathe through it. But yes, and then on the grander scale happens as well. So thank you so much. And yeah, you don't have to go anywhere, because we're going to actually be doing this as another 2-part episode. Listeners, stay tuned next week as we dive into the topic of sex and sexuality. But for now, I have all of your ads for your socials. Do you want to give them out loud to our listeners? And I'll add them in the show notes too.
At OG Dilly 91 is my Instagram, and all I have really is my Instagram.
There you go. That's what we do. So I'll link over to those. And listeners, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode. Make sure you also follow us at Gay A Podcast, so you get these new updates every Thursday for new episodes wherever you're listening and on all the socials. And until next time, stay sober, friends.